Time is strange, isn't it? Some days fly by in a blur. Other days crawl like they'll never end. We measure time with clocks, watch it age our bodies, but do we really understand it? The smartest people who ever lived tried to crack the mystery of time. They wanted to control it, reverse it, maybe even travel through it. So far, they've failed. But what if I told you 3 young men accidentally did what science couldn't? What if they walked into the past without even trying? This is their story. It was a bright Sunday morning in October 1957. 3 British Navy cadets were walking through the countryside of Suffolk, England. William Lang, 15, from Scotland. Michael Crowley, 15, from Wiltshire. Ray Baker, 15, from London. They were on a training exercise, following a map to find a small village called Kersey. Their job was simple: reach the village, take notes, and report back. "That'll be the village," William said, pointing ahead. "Yeah, that's the church tower," Michael replied. "Can we just hurry up?" "I'm starving," Ray complained. They could see Kersey in the distance. The church bells were ringing, calling people to Sunday service. Everything seemed normal. But as they got closer, something went wrong. "Wait, what happened to the bells?" William asked. The church bells had stopped. Not a slow fade, they just cut off. Like someone had pulled a plug. They walked down the narrow lane into the village. But where were all the people? The bells had just been calling them to church, but the streets were empty. Then they noticed something else. Something impossible. "Where's the church?" Ray asked, looking around. The church tower they'd seen from the hill was gone. Vanished. Like it had never been there. The 3 cadets walked through Kersey in growing confusion. This wasn't the village they expected. The roads weren't paved, just dirt paths. No cars anywhere. The houses looked ancient, built from wood and thatch like something from a history book. But the weirdest part? No people. Not one. The village was dead silent. No voices, no footsteps, no dogs barking. Even the birds had stopped singing. "This is creepy," Michael whispered. "Look at those ducks," Ray pointed to a stream. "They're not even moving." The ducks stood frozen by the water like statues. Nothing moved. Nothing made sound. William looked around at the trees. Weren't these red and yellow when we started walking? He was right. Outside the village, it was autumn. The leaves were bright red and gold, falling to the ground. But here in Kersey, the trees were green like it was spring. And there was no wind. Not even a breeze. Across a small bridge stood the only shop in the village. A butcher shop with a green door. They pressed their faces to the dirty windows and looked inside. What they saw made their stomachs turn. 3 dead cattle hung from hooks. But they'd been there too long. The meat was green and rotting. Spider webs covered everything. The shop looked like it had been abandoned for months, maybe years. They checked the houses. Empty. No furniture, no curtains, no signs that anyone lived there. The walls were painted plain white like prison cells. "It's like everyone just left," William said. But if the village was abandoned, why wasn't it falling apart? No broken windows. No vandalism. It was empty but perfectly preserved, like a museum that time forgot. And still, that unnatural silence pressed down on them like a weight. The cadets couldn't take it anymore. This place felt wrong. Evil, even. They hurried out of the village and climbed a hill on the other side. At the top, they turned back to look. "What the hell?" Michael gasped. The church tower was back. The bells started ringing again. Smoke rose from house chimneys. Birds sang in the trees. The wind rustled through the leaves, now autumn colors again. "The church, it's there now," Ray stammered. They ran. Whatever they'd just experienced, they wanted to get as far away as possible. For 30 years, the 3 men kept quiet about what happened. Who would believe them? Then in 1988, William Lang read a book about paranormal experiences. The author, Andrew Mackenzie, was asking readers to share their own stories. Lang wrote to Mackenzie. So did Michael Crowley, who remembered the same details. Ray Baker recalled less, but enough to confirm the basic story. Mackenzie was intrigued. He spent 2 years researching the village of Kersey and its history. What he found was shocking. Remember the abandoned butcher shop with the rotting meat? In 1957, that building was someone's home. It had been a house for decades. But Mackenzie dug deeper into the records. He discovered something incredible. That building had been a butcher shop, but not in 1957. It was a butcher shop from 1790 to 1905. More than 50 years before the cadets' visit. The building was even older. Parts of it dated back to 1350. Over 600 years old. Mackenzie had a theory. What if the cadets didn't see Kersey as it was in 1957? What if they saw it as it was centuries earlier? He focused on one clue, the missing church. The Church of St. Mary's in Kersey was built in the 14th century. But construction was interrupted by the Black Death, the plague that killed half of Europe between 1348 and 1349. The plague hit Kersey hard. Half the village died. The survivors fled in terror, leaving their homes empty. Mackenzie believed the 3 cadets had somehow seen Kersey as it was in 1349, after the plague, when the church was half-built and hidden by trees, when the village was abandoned and death hung in the air. It would explain everything, the empty houses, the silence, the feeling of dread, the butcher shop full of rotting meat. But it doesn't explain the impossible things, the frozen ducks, the missing wind, the trees changing color. Kersey isn't the only place where people claim to have slipped through time. There's the Palace of Versailles, where 2 Oxford professors swore they saw Marie Antoinette walking through gardens as they appeared before the French Revolution. There's Bold Street in Liverpool, where dozens of people report stepping into shops that don't exist anymore, seeing the street as it was decades earlier. And Suffolk County itself seems to be a hotspot for the impossible. UFO sightings, ghost stories, and strange encounters happen here more than most places. Maybe there's something about this land. Something that makes the barriers between past and present thin. 30 years later, William Lang returned to Kersey with Andrew Mackenzie. They walked the same path, visited the same buildings. The butcher shop was now called Bridge House. It was still someone's home, just as it had been in 1957. The owners had no idea about its history as a butcher shop. But they confirmed Mackenzie's research. Yes, it had been a butcher shop long ago. Yes, the building was ancient. Everything matched the cadets' story, except their story described the building as it was 50 years before they were born. Could 3 15-year-olds really have made up such an elaborate story? Could they have known about the building's history as a butcher shop when even the 1957 residents didn't? Could they have guessed about the plague, the half-built church, the medieval layout of the village? Or did they somehow step through time itself, walking into a moment of history preserved like an insect in amber? We may never know what really happened in Kersey that October morning in 1957. Science says time travel is impossible. Logic says 3 teenagers imagined the whole thing. But the evidence doesn't lie. The details match. The history checks out. And 3 men, now in their 70s, still swear it happened exactly as they remember. Maybe there are places where time works differently. Where past and present blur together. Maybe the universe has cracks in it, and sometimes, just sometimes, ordinary people fall through. All we know for sure is this: time is stranger than we think. And in a small village in Suffolk, 3 young men learned that the hard way. What do you think happened? Have you ever experienced something that made you question the nature of time itself?